All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. We are going to get started in just 60 seconds. We're just letting people come in to the virtual room. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Right. Okay. Seems like people are joining us. That's fantastic. So we are going to get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation with Casey Nicholaw. We have folks from all over the country and perhaps beyond. So thank you for taking the time to watch now or since this is being recorded later. My name is Dani Barlow, and I'm the director of SDC Foundation, and I'm really thrilled to be here and doing this conversation. So before we start, I just want to give a couple shout outs to some of our funders that allow us to do programs such as this one. So that is a special thank you to the New York State Council on the Arts, with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council, and as always to Stage Directors and Choreographers Society for support and partnership each and every day. So just a couple of logistics about this conversation before we get started. This session will run about 90 minutes. And if there are any questions from the audience today, from any of you, if you could please put your name and your question in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. We will get to some as we have time. Captions have also been enabled for this session as well, and you can find them at the bottom of the screen. This session is also, as I mentioned, being recorded. For anyone who misses it, or if you'd like to revisit the conversation, it will be made available in the months to come. If you're having any technical issues, you can use the chat function as it goes directly to Hannah, who's SDCF's program manager. And then I want to say a thank you to Paulina, and you'll see Jess as well, our interpreters today, for providing services. Okay, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to introduce Casey briefly. I imagine if you're here, then you know Casey's work. But just to summarize, because we should all be reminded of his accolades, Casey Nicholaw is a two-time Tony Award-winning director and choreographer of theater, film, and television. Nicholaw was awarded the 2011 Tony Award for co-directing The Book of Mormon and the 2023 Tony Award for Best Choreography for Some Like It Hot. He's received 11 additional Tony nominations for a few shows such as Aladdin, The Prom, Mean Girls, Something Rotten. And that's just to name a few. He's currently represented on Broadway with Aladdin and Book of Mormon, and in the West End with The Book of Mormon and Mean Girls. I think that is right, but he will correct me if I'm wrong. And upcoming, Casey will direct and choreograph the highly anticipated stage adaptation of The Greatest Showman, as well as the UK premiere of Disney's Hercules. And the Hercules production is currently running in Hamburg, Germany. He's also a performer, or I guess was also a performer, and sometimes is. And there's definitely more that you can read in his full bio on our website to learn more. But for now, I just want to jump into the conversation. So if we can please welcome to our screens, Casey Nicholaw. Casey, can you join us on the screen, please?
There we go.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Thank you so much, Casey, for doing this.
Pleasure.
We've had the pleasure of knowing each other for the last couple of years, but this is a perfect opportunity to ask you like all the questions I wanted to ask you.
Awesome.
So this is great. So, I think the place people typically start is a kind of like, where did you grow up? How did you fall into theater? All that kind of stuff. But I think that where I'd actually like to start, just based on that this is a focus on specifically directors and choreographers and the craft, as I'd love to just talk a little bit about what you're working on now and then dive in a little bit more to your practice. So I'm wondering specifically, the announcement just came out, I think, last week about The Greatest Showman. And first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
But second, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about just how long you've been working on the show, like where it is in the process.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working on it now for probably a year and a half or 2 years. We did a reading of it last summer in London, and then we did a five-week lab of it in London as well. And right now I'm in beautiful, cold Montreal. It's not too bad, actually. It was really bad a few days ago, but now it's not, which is great. But I'm just working on now integrating more of the circus stuff into what we did in the lab, since our rehearsal room didn't have a lot of airspace. So putting the flying stuff in, it's a big, splashy show. As you all know from the movie, it's going to be awesome. It's really been
That's amazing. That's great. Well, and along those lines, I guess I'm curious I was wondering if in doing this production, there's been like a fun new challenge for you. I know obviously big shows are your bread and butter, but I'm wondering if there's something with this show in particular that's been like uniquely challenging in like a fun way for you. Curious.
Children and acrobats.
Okay. Lots of children?
But actually, it's great. I mean, but acrobats have a different sort of sort of way of working than we
Yeah.
do. It's a slower, more methodical thing because it's like their lives.
Yeah.
If anyone gets hurt, they have to take a lot more time with that. So that's why we're spending the time a month here in Montreal to make sure we're doing everything correctly and people don't get hurt and all of that. And then it just takes a lot of extra steps. But I have to say, like the lab that we did was one of the hardest things I've ever done in 4 weeks. Because it's a big show in that way. There's so many pieces to it, so many things to figure out. But I also have to say it was one of the most rewarding. So it was
Yeah.
really fun. I'm super excited about doing it. And there you go.
That's great. I love that. I'm wondering then, just like along the lines of Greatest Showman, you're also working on Hercules right now. You did Aladdin. And I'm wondering if are thinking at all about this idea of like bringing something beloved to the stage. Like I'm wondering if there are like unique challenges in trying to make sure that when an audience is coming, they have certain expectations for what they're going to see or what that looks like, but also it's going to be about what's the best theatrical storytelling. So I'm just curious how you think about that.
Absolutely. It has to be stage worthy. And you have to figure out how it moves vocabulary wise and how the audiences are going to actually relate to it on a person to person level, and in a theatrical level. So you have to really think about that. I just don't think it works to just put something on stage. And, a lot of times you can't, you can't cut, you can't do something fast. You have to have a whole scene dedicated to whatever that builds up into what the song is. So it's a whole different beast, and I love doing that because I love stage and I love musical theater and I love what it does, and I love that to me you can bring something truthful and heighten it, which it has to be heightened because people are singing, and I love that. I love the art form a lot.
Yeah.
But there are always challenges. It has to build in a different way, and I think it's fun, and it takes a while. I mean,
Yeah.
usually between like 5 and 7 years to do a musical, or especially 7 for a brand new, like from scratch, like a prom musical or a something rotten musical or something that's completely from scratch.
And is that because it just takes time for it to learn what it needs to be, like to develop it enough for what it needs to be, or it's just the nature of the business, or?
Yeah, well, definitely. But I also think that when you're doing something totally from scratch, you don't have any idea what it's going to be.
Right.
Like prom was us, like, just sitting in a room going, what should the characters be? Who should the characters be?
Right.
Do they like each other? Like,
Right.
So then, we did it in Atlanta and it was okay. We knew it needed to be better, and then and we had done a lab first, and then we did another lab. Every show just reveals what it needs. If it's ready, if it's not ready, if it should go out of town, if it doesn't need to go out of town, that kind of thing. And I think you just kind of have to roll with it and just keep working and working and working. I mean, I just keep changing things until they say you can't change it anymore.
Sure.
And then I wait till we do the tour and then change it some more.
Right. Then you're like, now I can go back.
I can go back. Phew. Okay. I can always change that line finally.
Yeah. That's so funny. And it's nice, right? You're like, I'll have another opportunity to fix that because they told me to stop before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Like the critics are coming tomorrow. Stop it.
Right. Exactly. Right. That's right. It's done when you're forced to
run
stop.
out of time. Sometimes you go, we have to like give them 2 days to just like settle in before they just like jump into something new.
Yep. Great. That's really interesting. And so I'm curious about getting a little more granular because I had the pleasure, you were very gracious, and you let me come sit in on a rehearsal for Hercules Lab.
Yeah.
And I came the day that you were putting together a really big number.
Yes.
And I remember being like, what is happening? Because there's like people over here doing music and there's sets and props over here and dancing over here and you're staging over here. But then you were like, all right, let's run it. And then like a quarter of it was done. And I was like, how did that happen? And it was kind of incredible to see. And I guess I'm wondering, so I have like a couple questions now that I've been able to like, I've had the privilege to kind of watch it, something so big come together, at least just a little bit of it. And I'm wondering, it was like, it was beautifully chaotic, and then it was so clear, like it all became so clear. And I'm wondering, when you're putting a big number like that together, any big number, do you start like by yourself? Do you start with a group of people? Do you kind of, you're like, I trust these different people to do these things and we'll all just figure it out? Like, I'm curious how you tackle something so big.
Yeah, it's a combo of all those things. I do start with it by myself and go, and the number that Dani sat in on was 0 to hero, which is like the biggest number in Hercules. And I sort of just sit there and think about what I want it to be and what the story has to be told in it. It's almost like if you figure out all of those things and the build of it and what it needs to say and do and what moments need to be hit, then the steps come. It's not like I go, oh, I like these steps, let's put them in a number. That all happens after that first part. So I think about what I want it to do. Then I get together with the dance arranger, and in this case, David Chase, and I tell him sort of what I want. He goes back, he does stuff. I play it over and over and over and over and over in my head like it's a movie. Sit there and close my eyes, see how I see it, see what it should move like, that kind of stuff. And then the next step is that I'll get together with my associates. And on Hercules is Brendan Stimson and Ariel Reed, and we just sort of start coming up with steps and coming up with how it works and how it builds and do that. And then the next step after that is that we get like 8 dancers in a room. And then have like a week of pre-production. We do a week of pre-pro by ourselves, and then we add some dancers. And usually it's people that I've worked with or that I trust or that, aren't scared to work with me or something. Like, you know what I mean? There's not like a learning process. They all go like, okay, we got it.
Yeah. Right.
And that's kind of what you witnessed with Hercules Lab, that it was a lot of people that I'd worked on shows with. So I knew that they're all game and ready to go.
Yeah.
Right. Then you just start putting it together, and we just started doing that. And that was like the day we started teaching it and the day you saw the number at the same time. It is chaos, and it's, to me, absolutely thrilling. I work super fast and super hard, and that's why it's fun to work with people I know. I mean, it's always nice to bring new people in and meet new people, and then I can give them more work, but it's it's just a really joyful thing, and I love working hard, and I love creating, and that's my favorite thing. I would just be a happy man if I just every day went and worked and then went home.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, and that actually leads me into a nice question too, because I think I did feel that sense of like everyone, like there's a lot of joy in this room, and like everyone knows what they're doing, even if there's like 10 different things going on at the same time. Right. And I'm curious for you, right? You've got your people that you work with that and you're familiar with, but I'm curious either from when you started kind of like developing your crew or the people you like to work with, or when you're interacting with new folks, can you tell right away if you're going to work well together? Like, do you have to, do you ask certain questions? Like, I'm wondering about people who are looking, directors and choreographers who are like, how do I know if these people are my people? Like, is there a way that you've got to get a sense of that?
I think it's just a sense in, auditions. Although in this case, I ended up using the people that did it. They did it a production of it at a paper mill. And I ended up continuing with it. And so I didn't know a lot of those people. And it was great. I know them now and I love them. So it's really, it's great. I think you just have to see, it's that kind of thing when people come into auditions, and I always say, just the most important thing is just be yourself. And that's the absolute truth. And, I know when I first started doing it, I would actually chase people out of the rooms. When I see someone like did not do what they thought they were going to do, or that they just weren't right for the role, you could see that they were going to like have a breakdown when they went out. And I would just go out and say, okay, that process you're about to go through, don't, because it has nothing to do with you. And it's right. It's the truth. Someone could come in for me and I really respond to them, and they could go in for another director and they don't respond with them. But that's just like life and people you meet and friends. You know what I mean? So it doesn't even have to do with talent sometimes. But sometimes it does. Sometimes someone walks in and they just blow you away and you're like, it's perfect. But for me, it's about casting. You have to cast the roles right. Right. And someone that you feel like you're going to be able to create with, and that they have the right sense of humor if it's a comedy, and they have the right feel and look, so that it, even looks wise, it's important that you look at that person and they feel like the character.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because some of that is math. It's not just, you can have the right characteristics and you know what, it just doesn't feel like when you look at that person, they are that character in that way.
Right. And there's no good way. There's no good way. I think this is helpful for people to hear too, because there's kind of no good way to be like, it's not you, it's just you. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, sorry, it's just you.
There's such a thing sometimes if someone is a weaker character and you have just, you don't have much, they don't have much real estate on stage time wise. If they're a little shorter, it feels, I don't know, I'm not saying short people are weak at all.
Yeah.
No, but you know what I'm saying? But if you do the math and someone who is more dominant just has a bigger presence than the person who's not, it does the math for people, especially when they have two scenes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If the characters are written more fully and they can have a lot more colors, then you can cast whoever you want.
Right. Totally.
So they have the right sensibility. But
right. It's about casting.
It's also just about seeing people together, and it has nothing to do with the person who's auditioning.
Right. No, that makes complete sense. That makes complete sense. I'm also wondering too if you can talk a little bit about how you manage being precious or not precious with your work. So like when you're you put a whole number together, you feel really good about it, and then you're like, oh, you get some feedback that, oh, maybe it should shift or change, or people have an opinion about this thing. I'm wondering how like what to fight for. Is it just like gut? Is it I'm curious.
Yeah, it's gut for sure. And I'm not precious. I will change things like crazy. I'm not. In fact, the number that you watch me put together is so different now. And it is. I like to keep making things better. And also, there's things I get so excited about when I'm in rehearsals or creating. And then you see it on stage, and I go like, okay, well, that's fine. But it's certainly not exciting.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Doesn't have the impact I thought it would, so it has to change.
Yeah.
It definitely has to change. But I also think that when you're creating, you have to just really look at it, and it's really about your taste because you're the one who's putting everything together. So it has to be through my eyes because I'm the eyes.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's sitting at that tech table in a certain seat looking at the vision of all of it. But I think that I've lost my train of thought completely.
No, that's okay. I'll follow up then. Because I was wondering too, just when you were saying that, like, it can be 5 to 7 years that you're working on something, right? So, you've been working on, just use Hercules because we're both familiar, for a while, and then you're going to be doing it in the UK, and it was in Germany, right? And so you go back to it, but you've been with it for a very long time, but lots of audience members will be seeing it for the first time, right? And you've been working on it for years. And I'm curious how you allow how you look at something with fresh eyes. Like, do you have people that you trust to come and look at things? Do you just feel like you need to be like, okay, like I'm a new person looking at this. Like, how do you allow yourself to put fresh eyes on your own work?
I do feel that. I now remember what I was going to say. I was going to say that, you have to trust your gut in what is right for the show, or if something is good or not. And the thing is, I'm always like, if you hear one person go like, oh, I didn't like that, blah, 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 you go, okay, that's their opinion. If the second person comes to you, you're like, okay. If a third person comes to you, you're like, okay, I got to change that. Like,
okay. Yeah.
And that's just like, you'd be an idiot to have like 5 people tell you something is not right and to go like, well, I think it's right. Like, you can't do that. Right. You know what I mean? But also, as far as, I think sometimes it's tricky listening to a lot of people. You have to really listen to yourself and people that you trust, because I think that, everyone sort of wants to be like, I told him to do that. You know what I mean? And that's their own thing. And they may not even know they're doing that, but they do. But for me, I just sit in the audience and I just watch in previews like this. Watching audience members the whole time. And if they're sitting there like this, I'm like, okay, we got to change that scene. And that's kind of how it is. You know what I mean? And I also think too, I always say when I'm watching a show, like in previews or in tech or whatever, sometimes I can watch completely unbiased as like an audience member. And sometimes I don't even know that's what I'm going to do, but I do, and I watch and I go like, I love this. This is great. This is fun. You know what I mean? Or this part's boring or whatever. And then other times I'll sit there and I think I'm going to watch like an audience member, and I end up watching like a scientist. And I'm just like, okay.
Mm,
And I'm just writing everything. And I go in and I have to change a million things the next day because I couldn't take it.
yeah,
I just don't know which one of me is going to be watching it. And
sure.
it's, and that's kind of fun too, that you go like, oh, that doesn't feel right anymore. And
Mm,
also a lot of things too are domino. You change things during the day and you're so excited to change them, but then you're like, ah, shit, now I got to change that thing too. Because now that
I know it
she
doesn't
has
work.
the stronger new scene, that song isn't good enough for her. Or, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's super fascinating, and that is nice to think about. Like, right, you're not quite sure like which you will show up, but all of them are helpful, right? Like all of them are
Totally.
helpful to that process.
Exactly. The scientist and the audience member are both just as valid.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I'm I'm wondering now, just to like zoom out a little bit, I'm curious where you get inspiration from. Is it just from the thing on the stage? Do you have to consume a lot of other art? Like, do you feel like it's all just up here? Like I'm curious where inspiration comes from for you.
I don't know. It just happens. I think, well, I get it from people for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like I'm not, and again, I'm not precious in that way. It's just like even here, there's this one part of in Greatest Showman, this one number, and we have two levels, and one of the dancers was just like playing around when this beautiful moment was sort of happening, and she was just up on the level, and she was just doing these port de bras and stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, that looks gorgeous, and it's going to look really gorgeous when Natasha Katz lights it. So all of a sudden, I have like two other women up there too. Look
Yeah.
beautiful. You never know. And it's also, she was just like, feeling it with her heart. She just decided she had to do it. I'm like, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
You just never know. And that to me is the most fun part. To go like, oh my gosh, that person is the funniest
Yeah.
person ever. Let them do what they do. And
That
that's happened so
exploration.
many times. And also, that's the most fun part about doing a new musical is creating around the person who's playing the part.
Mm,
And like you
yeah.
said, okay, if someone for some reason isn't what you thought when you cast them, how do you cast them because they're talented? How do you make it work for them and make
Yeah.
them look? Because my job always is to make the person that I'm working with the best they can possibly be, and to help them get there, and to protect them and support them and have them enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy, and sometimes I mean, it's just so rewarding when you see them just blossom into it. Then I feel like, I feel like these days I'm in my papa period, that I'm just so proud of all my kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really do. Because I've worked with a lot of people for years now, and I go like, I remember what they were when it was Ariel's first audition, and it was an open call, and I cast her, and it was her first Broadway show, and now she's my associate on Hercules.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
That's really great. Yeah, being inspired by the people around you is really great. And actually just what you said about because I feel like that, like when people, they use different percentages, but they're like 80% is casting, 80, casting is the most important thing, things like that. But this idea of like what happens when someone that you cast doesn't ultimately deliver in the way that you were hoping, how
Right.
do you kind of work around to be in service of what the show needs and what their capacity is just like a really interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, and unfortunately, sometimes it just doesn't work out too.
Right.
And that's really hard.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So actually, I'm curious because we've had a focus here at the foundation / at the union about associates, Broadway associates, just like the work of associates in general. And I'm curious if you can talk about what makes a good associate for you. Maybe just start there. What makes a good associate for you?
Well, it is. I will say it's a different beast when you're a director and choreographer.
Sure.
Because you know what I mean? Because the associate choreographer has to run the entire room or even set some things because I just don't have the time
Right.
in the acting room. So I'm like, go, and that's why the pre-production is so important, so
Yeah.
that they feel totally prepared to go in that room, and then they have to make decisions whether I'm not there or run back in and go like, are you all right if I try this? And I'm like, go for it, because
Yeah.
I can always change it. And then same thing with the associate director. If I have to be in the dance room, I said, go take them and sort of sketch in the scene, and that's why it is important to have people that do
Right.
or that know you well. I sort of have started, but again, like I said, I keep meeting more people. And so then, luckily and happily, a lot of associates are now going on to do their own thing, and that's great. And now some of the people that were dancers in a show that I did are now my associate. And it's great to see that and to empower that. And I also watch people blossom when they were a dancer before and now they have to take on, a creative but also management position in a way.
Yep.
And to watch them blossom is so exciting and really fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm wondering along those lines for people, just like advice for anyone who's listening, if you are in that kind of like, I'm a dancer, I'm a performer, but I'm interested in maybe associate work. Do you have any suggestions for people just like in their own, like in the show that they're in, that they're a dancer, but there's obviously associates in the room or something like that? Like, is there a good way to like learn or like what you might be able to learn in the room that would be helpful if you're interested in something like that?
Well, I just think pay attention,
Mm,
keep
yeah.
your phone off. I mean, really, that's how I ended up doing what I wasn't anyone's associate. I was in 8 Broadway shows as a dancer, and they were,
Yeah.
except for one, they were original Broadway shows, so I got to see shows get put together.
Mm,
I just watched people do it, and I saw
yeah.
what I thought was genius, and I watched the things I didn't think were genius, and sort of developed, put my own stamp on stuff, and thought, oh, this is how I would do that, and that's how I would do that, and that's kind of how it came together for me, and that's what I say, just pay attention. I just feel like, so often, people work so hard to get to this place,
Yeah.
and then they're on the phone the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, why would and it's funny because I don't always say this, but there's when I did the prom, I asked people the first day, and I was so happy I did this because it made a difference, and maybe they would have all done that on their own because they were such a great ensemble.
Yeah.
And I said the first day, I said, how many of you this is your Broadway dream? And so many raised their hands. And I said, don't miss it. Turn your phones off, pay attention, watch Beth Level and Chris Sieber and Brooks Ashmanskas and Angie Schworer, what they do, and get a master class from them.
Yeah.
And watch all this happen and enjoy this happening. And they were such a great ensemble. They watched everything. They would sit there for Beth's numbers and like scream and clap for her. And then in the same way, the adults in the show were like, can we come in and watch the kids? And it was awesome. It was such a good group in that way. And I was so happy that I sort of said that to them, because it's so easy. We're all so used to that.
Yeah.
We're so used to it. And we're used to everywhere we go to stop for a second and just do that. But like, don't miss that. And also, that's why I will say that segue wise, if it's what you want to do, watch people do it.
Yeah. Right.
Sit in that room and watch people do it. Sit in the corner and take your notes and make your mental notes that you're like, oh, this is something I might want to do. And also, that's great that you have the observership program too, because people have like followed me around, and I think it's been great for them. And even if they're not ready to do it now, or they watch it and go, I'm so interested in this, but I'm going to go do another show as a performer, that's great too. But it gets in your head and it makes you say, hey, I might want to do this one day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
We always want to hear new voices,
Yeah. And I think that's really good advice too. I feel like it feels like so much of this industry is about like who who you're connected to, but people also are always paying attention. Like you never know whose mouth your name is in, right? Like it depends. Oh, I saw that person, they were really paying attention. Well, actually, maybe we should have them do X, Y, or Z, right? And so that idea of like paying attention and being present and being curious feels like something that is like just really good advice, Justin.
All the time. Because also you start, the creatives and directors and choreographers and the associates, you just start filing people. You know what I mean? You just see that someone's like working really hard and they're always present and they're doing their job, or they have a great technique, or they have a great style, or a great upbeat personality in the rehearsal room, and you're like, check. And then you go like, oh shoot, someone got injured. We need someone ASAP to do this. And then you say, what about that person? And then they're in the show the next day.
Right.
And that's because they were really doing their job.
Right.
And that they were really present and they had a good attitude. And, I think it's important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. I'm curious. I'm in the advice portion of this conversation, but I'm also wondering for people who are and it might be similar advice, but I'm curious for people who are like, I love the way that you direct, Casey. Like I love big, big musicals. I guess I'm wondering if there's any additional or other advice that's kind of to like help learning that style uh, of theater, like big, like if you're really interested in like big musicals, like do you have any suggestions for people?
Um, I think just do what you like to do. Watch
Yeah,
a, you know what I mean? Create a show that you want to see, and I feel like I create shows that I want to see. I mean, I'm also really interested in smaller shows. I just happen to have not done them. You know
yeah,
what I mean? But I know that my favorite thing to do is have people laughing for a really long time and then suddenly have tears in their eyes and go like, how did that happen?
mm,
And that's what I like to do, and maybe I do that too much, I don't know, but it's what I like to do story-wise, but it's also what I like watching.
yeah,
So I tend to like do things that way.
right. Kind of trusting your creative gut.
Absolutely, because also, too, you may like a big musical, but also you're really drawn to something else, and you should do the thing you're drawn to, or put your personality into it.
Yeah, 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 that's great. That's great. Um, I am going to ask a couple of questions about a couple of specific shows or specific things because I think that that might be interesting. One, it's a little bit selfish, but I'm wondering, um, am I correct that you were one of the dance choreographers on Trolls, the movie?
Yes,
Is
I
that right?
was. I don't
Okay,
even know.
I love that movie, but I actually am really curious about what it was like. If you want to talk a little bit about like what that meant and like what it was like doing choreography for an animated film. Maybe it's no different than anything else, but it feels like I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So I'm just curious.
Well, they would just send me the songs, and I would be in my studio with like I was like six dancers, and for fun we put on troll wigs.
I
Just so
love it.
we
Get
could feel the
inspired.
characters, just so we could feel the characters. And we just choreographed and did dance steps so that they could animate dance steps.
I see.
You know
Okay.
what I
So
mean? So
you, yeah.
it was sort of that. We did the numbers so that they could animate some of the vocabulary. And they told us
Fascinating.
what we wanted the numbers to be like. And some of it made it, some of it didn't, and a lot of the songs, like some of the songs we were choreographing to, ended up not being in the movie.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Sure.
you know, so it was just us doing stuff that they could then take and animate to our steps. So
Yeah.
we kind of made them bigger steps that would be able to, be sort of recognizable or have a personality on screen
Yeah.
animate.
Fascinating. Anyway, that was just for me. I was
So
curious.
funny.
Um, but can you talk also a little bit? I know you mentioned a little bit earlier that you were like, I get the opportunity to go back to a show if it goes on tour, if it goes somewhere
Right.
else, And I'm wondering specifically about Mean Girls, just because there was like a big chunk of time between like when the Broadway production closed, and then I guess it went on tour. Did it go on tour?
Yeah, it went on tour.
So it went on tour, and then it went to the UK. And
Right.
I'm curious, since you were able to like spend some time going back into it, if you can speak a little bit to just like the humor itself. But I imagine like maybe it needed like a little more attention than something that feels like it's a little more timeless. I'm curious just if you felt that that was like a unique thing, or you spent a little bit more time with it because our
Yeah, we changed Mean Girls for London a lot.
really.
A lot, a lot. And not like, oh, we have to change this because we're in London,
Right.
and some of it was based on timeliness, but not really. We just felt like Act One was too long, and there was
Okay,
there
sure.
was a moment in Act One where we're always like, ah, there's more. I mean, all four of us have said that, so it's
Yeah, okay.
everything out of turn. And so we cut 15 minutes off Act One,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
we cut 10 minutes off Act Two, and we changed some songs and we cut some songs, and it was really really fun to work on, and I think it's really good in London, like really
Mm,
makes me so happy there.
yeah.
And also, then they also were like, we feel like we cut all that, and they were like, I feel like we need a little more, and then we added a mega mix, um,
Oh,
which I
okay.
was super surprised because I'm not really a mega mix kind of guy,
Yeah.
but it was actually really fun to do, and we did it like in one night. And it's not like your traditional let's sing all the songs again and dance. We actually didn't even sing in it, but I just did lots of comic gags and dance. and it ended up being a blast. And the audience loves the energy of it, and it's super fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
But it
That's
was,
great. Yeah, no, I was,
I
yeah.
think we were all really happy with how it ended up in London.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I was curious just specifically because humor changes so quickly. I was curious with the opportunity to go back in, how much that would change. But
Definitely. I mean, when we started going back in, Tina and Jeff were like, I think we should end Act One with Revenge Party. And I'm like, it doesn't really feel
mm.
like the right song, but we made Revenge Party 10.5 minutes long.
Oh wow, okay. And it does
But
end
it's just,
Act One?
and it totally worked. And it ends Act One. And then we
Hmm.
wrapped everything else that was another 15 minutes after that into it. And it's really fun and it moves well and it's this whole like epic thing, but it was really fun to work on.
Oh, so fascinating, so interesting. Wow, that's great. I'm I'm also wondering, again, thinking about your work across the board. We've talked about a couple of different shows, and you've done so many. And one that's like recently stuck in my mind is Some Like It Hot,
Uh-huh.
specifically the tap dance. I keep calling it the tap dancing number. It's not. It's the door number. It's the
But
number
it
with
is
all the
tap
doors.
dancing. No, it's tap dancing with
It's
door.
right. There's tap dancing
Yeah.
too, but it's
It's
like
all tap
door.
dancing. It's a whole chase with tap.
Yeah, a whole chase with tap.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you do you know in your mind which number that you've put together has been the most complicated in all the shows that you've done? Because that one seems like quite
There's
a
a
big one.
lot. That one was pretty complicated, and that's one where you really need your associates,
Yeah.
and stage managers, because John McGinnis and Steve Bebout were like notating everything, and this is door A, and this is door B, and that's door F, and door F has to be on side E, and like all of that, and just trying to keep up with me as I'm doing it. And it's funny because we did 2 labs of Some Like It Hot
Mhm.
before we ended up rehearsing for Broadway, and in both of them we had the chase, but it wasn't tapped.
Ah.
And so
Okay.
it still was the same idea. And then I was like, you guys, I just think it would be really fun if we tap the whole thing. And so then put tap steps to everything we'd already sort of created.
Yeah.
It just ended up being a blast.
That's amazing.
I
And
love it.
people were like, fun, or they were like, oh no.
And the vocabulary for that show has so much tap in it that I love it because it is my favorite thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a bit, yeah, yeah, obviously a big part of Something Like It Hot. That's great. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, I'm gonna if folks have questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. I'm going to read some of them. But I'm gonna read one right now, and I've got a couple more questions myself. But I see one that talks about spam a lot, so I'm just gonna read that one to you real quick and see what you think. But so George Title says, what was one of the most valuable and useful things you learned about Mike Nichols on Spam a Lot? I'm curious if you can
Oh wow. He ended up being like my theater dad in the best way. He just was we had such a good relationship, and it was so funny because he always said, bet on the people. And I agree with that. And it's so funny because I got this call out of the blue. Mike Nichols wants to meet you to choreograph the show. And at that point, I choreographed a show at Radio City, and I was about to choreograph a show for City Center.
So where did he see your work?
He didn't.
Oh,
He just heard from other people that he should meet me.
this is to your point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to his apartment, and I had like my little reel of my work, and I had my resume in my bag, and I was like ready to show him. We talked for an hour, and then he said, "Well, you want the job?" And cut to me, I said yes.
Yeah, of course.
Cut to me sobbing in the elevator on the way down, just sobbing in a cab, sobbing. And that was it. And we like worked really closely on it. And really, it was awesome. But, he had always the best things to say. And, the one note he always says is, wonderful. Now do it as yourself. And this kind of, I mean, honestly, every note I ever have to give a company is like, okay, now be truthful again. Something to just remember. And that is, if you want to ask what I respond to when people come into an audition room,
Yeah.
if someone's truthful to themselves, once people start putting it on, it loses the authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think that's something really important for people who go into audition. And I know that even when I was an actor, I'd get like, this crazy character. And then I would go run over lines with my partner at the time. And he'd go like, you don't have to act like a character. You already are one. I was like, okay, got it. But
Got
it's the truth. You don't have to put it on and try to act like something.
Yeah.
Just keep it truthful. But that's the thing I learned from him. And I think I already felt that, but it was nice to have him say that. And also I remember asking him over lunch, like one of our first meetings, I said, Mike, what was it like to transition? How did you feel transitioning from a performer to a director? Because that's what he did. And he said, my boy, I was so happy to stop being the baby and to be the papa. And I do feel that. And I feel that I like taking care of everybody.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that I never have to wake up and get in the shower and go, Ma! And hope that my voice is still there. Like, you know what I mean? That's so happy.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. That actually dovetail into another question that someone's asked that's actually, right around those lines, which is, okay, this is Austin Koo, and they ask, how did you change the industry's perception of you to see you in that way, going from, performing to director choreographer? Because you already mentioned that you didn't start at, they talk about, starting as an assistant associate, but you didn't start that way. You kind of just jumped into it. But I think the question is, was it hard to change the industry's perception of you from a performer to a director?
You know what? It honestly never even crossed my mind. It's about, I just jumped into the work and did the work. To me, it's all about the work,
Yeah.
And I'm sure some people were like, oh, who does he think he is, like doing this? I'm sure that has to happen, but I can't listen to what people say.
Yeah.
I'm not on social media. I don't read anything. I don't listen to anything. I just, you know what I mean? To me, it's it's about the work. And I think don't worry about the perception. Just do what makes you happy. And do the work. Everyone's going to have their opinions, but I think ultimately everything does end up about the work. No one's going to care about what the perception is if your work is good.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. It's like, it's even, it's a weird segue, but, going to Book of Mormon, everyone was so worried that people were going to get so offended by the show, but it ended up being a good product.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why it wasn't as controversial as people thought it was going to be. And because also the intentions behind it and behind the characters in the things they were saying were organic to the situation.
Right. It's true. Right. It's truthful. Right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Someone else, Brian James, says, I'm grateful for this, so thank you. Stage and screen actor, directed a bunch of shows, shadowing off Broadway. Curious about the number one thing you look for in a good associate. So I know you've talked a little bit about like the types of people you want around you, but I'm curious if you can talk about, I'm curious if you can speak a little bit, like it's both, their work as an associate, but a lot of that is like management too. And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to like what that role entails.
Yeah, I think it has to be someone who listens, who really listens to what I'm saying so that they know how to talk to people about what I see and what I'm looking for. And I think that's, to me, the most sort of important thing. And also has to be someone I enjoy being with. I want to go to lunch with my associate, because we're going to have to plenty of times, So I think it's that, but I think it's someone, you never know, but it's someone who has sort of the same sort of sensibility that I have.
Yeah.
Or is like, I have some really good associates who run interference for me all the time. It's like, not the time to ask that question, and talking to the actors in a respectful way.
Yeah. Right.
And knowing what to tell them in the same vocabulary that I do a little bit.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I have got another question from Joe Spiota, and he asked about Something Rotten. It says something rotten seems to have come out of nowhere to him. What made you know it was going to be a hit? Like, what was the creative process like with so many comedic stars, and how much influence do you let actors have in the creation of new work or gags?
Well, I don't let them be free once the show is set, because it takes us a lot of crafting to make it right.
Sure. Yeah.
And I've gone back and seen shows where you're like, okay, they're out of control and it doesn't tell the story anymore. But it's so funny. no one knows it's going to be a hit. Like, we didn't know what it was going to be. So it's like, I never go like, oh, this is what it's like working on a hit. You never know it's going to be a hit or not, you know?
Right,
Um,
right.
so you're working just to make it good enough, but you have to create it around the people you have. And I'll use this as an example on that show. Is there was one, we had done a lab, and the role that Brooks Ashmanskas ended up doing, we didn't end up continuing with the person who played it. And I was like, I just called him up. I'm like, okay, Brooks, there's this role in Something Rotten, and it's a terrible part, and it's not funny, and you will get no laughs, and people won't really care about the role.
Do you want to do it?
Do you want to do it? And because at that point we'd only met and worked on prom, a reading and a lab of prom, and I sent him the script, and he said, yeah, I would love to do this because it's a great group of people. I told him Christian was doing it, Brian Darcy James, and everyone else. And then we just started shaping it around him, completely shaping it around him. And then he had a song, and then he, had a costume change on stage, and he brought so much humor to it. And that's what's fun about being and then we just wrote it for him. I mean, when I say we, Carrie and Wayne and John O'Farrell, and it ended up being great. That said, I had to always go like, okay, not bigger. I don't ever want you beveling. I don't ever want you doing this. You have to know not to do that. And, Brooks is so smart that, he can't resist sometimes going over the top. But the thing is, he always knows when it's right and wrong. And he doesn't do it. And he is just one of my absolute favorites. I could just watch him all the time. He makes me laugh all the time. And and I was so happy to do that show with him. He was awesome. And everybody was so good in that show. And so much fun. We had a really good time working on it.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like, even though you work on shows that are pretty fun until they make you cry, that the environment in the room seems to really help facilitate a exciting, fun product as well as
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's a pretty loose room, but everyone needs to work hard. Right. And that's the bottom line. But I think that for people that I respond to in the way they do musical theater, and that, I love when people, like I said, are honest but heightened. If people have that, it ends up being a great room.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Right, like if you work hard, you can have fun while you do it.
Totally.
Yeah,
it's possible to do both.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, so this is from Eric Gelb. I'm going to leave in the pleasantries just because they're very nice. People are very excited that you're here.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, Eric says, hi, Casey, you're the directing role model for me. Thank you for taking the time. I directed Mean Girls twice last summer after seeing it 10 times on Broadway. So I returned to your direction as a textbook of sorts. You mentioned the desire to make changes all the way up until it's pencils down. I'm curious how you approach the speed of those changes as a director. So the process between like being handed a MIDI file, hearing it and having to put it on bodies like that evening, right? Like doing that very quickly. What does that look like for you?
Well, I work pretty quickly. I know everyone was always like, well, it takes so long to text something. And I'm like, okay, I can't watch it for another second. It's going in tonight. And we make it work. And usually people jump to that and they're excited about it. But I also talk to the actors. I say, if we did this today, could you do it tonight? And would you be comfortable with doing it tonight? And sometimes they'll say, no, I need another day. And then I say, okay, then look at the material. We'll rehearse it tomorrow and put it in tomorrow night. Like that. But, also like people, like there was a number in Something Rotten that people, we knew wasn't working in two. And rather than go into tech the whole thing, wait till a preview and then change it, we ran to my studio while they were teching something else and changed the whole number.
Wow.
And that was in the middle of tech. And we did it. And it was great.
Yeah. You're right. You're just like, doing it.
Just do it. Yeah. If I get something in my head that something's wrong, I don't want to watch the wrong thing anymore. I have to change it and do the right thing.
Yeah.
Or the better thing. Or I think it's the right thing and then it's not the right thing at all. Like the number in Something Rotten again, the number omelet just was not quite working in Act 2.
Yeah.
So I completely did another version of it, and we rehearsed it for a whole week during the day. And then we're getting ready to put it in at the end of the week. and we put it in, and like, a couple people saw, and I watched the number, and after a couple people saw me, were like, hey, that was pretty good. It's like, great, you're never seeing it again.
No.
And we completely, I was like, we're going back to what we had. But then it's like a learning process. Then I took a lot of the stuff in the new version and combined it with the old version, and took out the things that didn't work. And then suddenly that number got so much applause, so many laughs, because it now worked. And we mishmashed how we could do all of it.
Yeah, that's great. And just inserting my own question here, when you put in when you're putting in numbers or changing things night to night, and audience, because what feels to me, but I'm sure to other people in the Broadway space, it feels like a long preview process. Like the previews can be like a long preview process. And I'm wondering how, like, what do you get from an audience? You're like getting where the laughs are, where they're not laughing. Like, what does sitting, like watching an audience watch your show over and over again, like, what does that help you do as a director, choreographer?
Well, it does have to do with laughs. But it also has to do with structure. It has to do with numbers that don't land. It has to do with all kinds of stuff. It has to do with, like, to me, most of it has to do with someone not earning a song, or not earning a moment, or it's designed so that you're supposed to feel something for this character in Act 2, but you're not feeling anything for them. So, like, we got to change something. We got to add a scene so that we feel for them, or what, or whatever you need to do. But that's what it is. And sometimes you really do need all that time. I think it's a dangerous thing, though, because on a comedy, sometimes I gotta go like, oh shit, we just gotta open this, because I also think that there becomes a time when the actors have peaked, or they're gonna start acting. They're gonna start.
They're gonna start doing other stuff.
Just exhausted. They're just exhausted. You know? So it is tricky, and sometimes you just know, I'm not adding anything else tonight. They've got to settle in, because they've had too many new things, and we don't want to like tax them so much. You still have to, even if it's not completely right, they still have to settle in with a version before you give them the next round of stuff.
Right. Knowing how much to give.
Absolutely. Or when it's just going to completely flip someone out.
Right.
I mean, speaking of Mean Girls, when we did it in DC, Erica Henningsen got so many new pages every day, and she just did it. She was a monster with just like, all right, give me those 50 new pages. I'm going to go in. And, I sit there with my notepad. I mean, actually my clipboard with all the new pages, and we sit there and I go through each one. Everyone got that? Great. Next. Everyone got that? Next. Here's the next one. We should rehearse that so that we don't just do it, and it just, you go through the whole thing, and that's sort of the process of every day. You do that. You give notes, do that at 1:00. Get through as many changes as you can. If we didn't rehearse it, it doesn't go in. If it's a one-line thing, I say, are you okay tonight? And everyone says yes, and then we do it. It's just, but it is a back and forth about what we can and can't do.
Right. That makes sense. Alyssa, oh, there we go. Alyssa Homogena, I think I said that wrong, but I think it's close. How do you approach directing book/non-choreographed parts of a musical? Are your techniques influenced by your choreography background?
That's a great question. If you're doing a musical, the scenes have to be as buoyant as the numbers, I think. And not meaning like happy and big and buoyant, but have that energy. Because if you're doing a scene that feels like it's from a different show, or you let the energy go out of it, or suddenly, it feels like a TV scene, then the song's not going to come out of nowhere. So it's really, again, about earning the songs. So I have to make sure that everything just keeps flowing. I mean, everything keeps like literally moving,
right?
As one piece. And that was one of the things I learned early on. Was, when I was in Crazy for You as a performer, my first Broadway show, and Susan Stroman and Mike Ockrent worked so well together that you didn't know where the scenes, and because the energy of the scenes were so buoyant, and then the dance numbers were so buoyant, and you didn't know where one started and one left off. It just felt like a seamless piece, and it was really exciting to me. And I believe that that's one of the reasons for the success of a show sometimes, is just how it literally moves in energy as well as in choreography.
Yeah. And do you think that factors into why you like to direct and choreograph?
Definitely.
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Because it's so interesting being in this job and supporting directors and choreographers. I've seen a lot of stuff, and now I'm like getting a really good grasp of how to articulate direction and choreography, which has been wonderful. And I now am better at being like, oh, the director and choreographer, I don't know if they were talking to each other because I can see where a scene ends and a song begins. Like,
Completely,
yeah,
completely. And I was in enough shows to see the times that it didn't happen or that it
mm,
happened just like you're saying,
yeah,
and it isn't always successful.
right,
And I don't
right.
think it's something that an audience can necessarily put their finger on to know why it is suddenly boring.
Yeah, right. Right. But that can be one of the reasons. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
totally.
100%. Um, okay, this is interesting. Paige Price says, "Hi, Casey."
Hi, Paige.
I was like, I thought you might know her. She says, "Have you thought about writing a book? There are lots of books from previous generations, and with your experience as an actor and director and choreographer, it feels like you bring new insights to the field. Are you writing a book or?"
I'm not writing one. You can publish it if you want. Um, no, I've actually had a lot of people say that and
Mm,
tell me that. Who knows? I just feel like who'd read it? You know what I mean? Really? It's like I sort of feel like that. Who knows? Maybe. I do love telling stories, and also maybe if I write them down, I won't tell them a million times and drive people crazy.
well, I think people are happy to hear it, but yeah, I think people would be. I'm just putting it out there, just in the Zoom room. Um, okay, Brienne Bishkoff says, "Hi, Casey. When you're working on musical comedy specifically, what is your process for staging a number in order to enhance the punchline of a joke being sung?"
Oh wow, Can you actually say it one more time?
Absolutely. Yes, it says when you're staging a number, like what is your process like for staging a number in order to enhance the punchline of the joke being sung? So I guess when there's a joke in a song, is there something you do to help?
I would say and that's a tricky one because it really depends on what it is. But I would say don't treat it like a joke.
Mm,
You know what I mean? It just has to be absolutely serious because it should be very serious for the character. And if it is and the situation works, then it will get the laugh. If you're
yeah,
like, it's building up and you're like hitting them with it and winking at the same time, it's not going to get the laugh. You know what I mean? That's
right,
just my gut, but it would depend on the actual material.
right, right. That makes a lot of sense. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions. There's a lot of questions about associate work. People are wondering about associates. I think that there's a lot of interest in that right now, and I think people are curious about
That's
how
great.
that
That's great.
um how you do that and what that looks like and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just trying to see if there's any other questions that unless there's anything else you want to say about associates, those are kind of the questions that
No,
people.
they're key though. They work so hard.
Yeah.
They do so much. They're underappreciated by a lot of people, and it's like it ends up being like one of your most important people to
Yeah.
be working with every single day. And like I said, especially as a director choreographer, because they have to run the other room
Right.
for you because you literally just can't be at two places at one time.
Right. Right.
So it
Right.
has to be someone you absolutely trust, or that you've worked with enough times that you do trust them.
Yeah, right. 100%. 100%. I'm curious. I mean, it feels so silly, except we're in 2025, but you're not on social media, which is a beautiful thing. Do you feel you miss stuff, or do you feel like blissfully like unburdened? Is that is it?
Um,
I'm just curious because it's something I
don't
aspire
feel
to
like I
myself.
miss anything.
Yeah.
It's just not me, you know.
Yeah.
Also, I have very thick skin when it comes to my work and what I do
Mm,
and what's right for the show and taking care of
mm,
that. But I think my skin's too thin to like read things about myself or
yeah.
negative things. And also, I'm just not someone that wants that much negativity in my life. You
Yeah. Sure.
and I do
Absolutely.
worry, and about stuff. And I'd rather worry about my work and making sure it gets right and that I entertain people.
Yeah.
And it's just not. I'm just happy that I never did it.
Yeah. That does sound nice. I'm wondering, is there anything? I'll see if there are any more questions, but then if not, I've got a couple more, and then we'll wrap it up. But I'm wondering, is there anything you feel you haven't done yet that you'd like to do? Is there anything like that? I mean, it feels like you probably could if you wanted to, but I'm curious if there's
Um,
something that you haven't done that you are interested
no, I'm I'm so happy. I mean,
Yeah.
with the work that I've gotten and the work
Yeah.
that I've been drawn to,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, there's always surprises, and there's certain things that you had no idea were going to come your way, and then they do, and you think, oh God, I hope I can do a good job with this, and then you hopefully do. You know, yeah, I'm just happy to like be open to things, and
Yeah.
at,
Yeah.
at this point, you know, I always wanted to do Dream Girls, and I did it in London, and so that was like so huge for me,
Yes.
so much fun. You know, I always wanted to do Most Happy Fella, and that was I did that at Encores. So
Okay. Okay. So you got to
I
tick
got
that
to
off.
do kind of the two big ones I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay. Laura Hirschberg says, "Hi, Casey. Thank you for your sparkling work. Can you talk about your methods of collaborating with writers during the development process, particularly
Oh,
when it comes to cuts and rewrites?"
yeah, I mean, you know, so many people now. It's not. I think a lot of people. There's a misconception that you know the writers come in and they go, "Here's a script. Do you want to direct it?" And it's not that way anymore at all. You know, it's like
Mm,
people put the team together and say, "Okay, do this musical," and so we get together and we talk about it, what it should be, and what we want it to be like, and stuff. And then you know, the writers will write an outline or start writing some. We start song spotting where we you know want the songs to be, and then we're just working on it the whole time together
yeah,
group, and
together.
come
Yeah.
in and then I go, I think it would be funny if this, or I can see that happening, and it just ends up being a conversation, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's nice. And do you prefer being with the process from its development versus being like, here's a script?
I do. I really do, you know. I mean, it's been done both ways.
Sure.
But yeah, I do. I love doing it. I love the creating of it. You know, I will say, you know, the thing I miss is being more in person for things. Than,
Ah,
you
I
know, than
see. A
having
lot of
to
it's
do meetings. And a
virtual.
lot of it you have to, but you know, there's something, you know, I think that there's something about the process when you actually are all together and also the downtime. So if you're together for a day, let's have lunch. You have lunch, you're sitting and eating, and you're like, you know what I was just thinking? What about if we did And that's when you get some of the best stuff.
Yeah.
And when you're on this on Zoom and you have a task at hand and you finish it, you're like, okay, guys, bye.
Right.
Do the thing. You don't get to have that extra idea or that thing that actually ended up reshaping the whole first act or something.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I love that. I miss that. And when we do that, that's always more productive, so much more productive.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. I feel that um we were so grateful for a while to have the virtual option, especially in a time where we couldn't gather. And now I feel that kind of like everyone feeling like they're like, oh, I wish I could be in person again. Like, but we were so we've molded our lives to that virtual space. And now how do we get ourselves back in person more? I feel like it's like a tension that people are feeling because they crave the in-personness. But what being virtual does for you is something different, you know. Anyway, so I just echo those
Yeah.
sentiments.
I mean, it's better than not having meetings, you
Sure.
know. And if you're in four different places, it's great that you're able to do that. But,
Yeah.
you know, it used to be, all right, we're going to fly everyone to one place and have them spend a week or two together. And that is really the best way to do it,
Yeah. Yeah.
I, I think.
Um, okay, this is an interesting one. Shayna Pahuja says, "Hi, Casey. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where a cast member doesn't want to take your direction or they feel differently about the character than you do? How do you find a middle ground because you still want the show to have a cohesive vision?"
Um, it can be tricky. It really can be tricky when someone is fighting you on everything you're telling them it is. You
I
know,
can imagine. Yes.
it can be tricky. Well, also because you know, and it really has to do with that person's insecurities mostly. You
Sure.
know, and then it's really hard when you watch them sort of, you know, falling apart. You know that like that
Right.
they're being the ones that are being destructive to themselves.
Right.
Because also too, and you know, and then also if they're closed down about it, then there's no way we can keep
Mm-hmm.
growing that or that I can help them. And that has happened, you know, but it's also like again, the writers and myself have been working on the show for 4 years already. So we know what the characters need to be in order to tell the story. And again, I'm never going to let anyone look stupid unless they're hell bent on doing it themselves. And then you can't do anything
You
about
can't
it.
help them. You can't help them. Yep. Um, okay, one more question from Joe Spiota. He says, being both a director and a choreographer, when you approach new work, what comes first for you, the music or the book? Or is it always different?
I think it's always different, but mostly the book.
Hmm. Oh,
Because
that's interesting. Okay.
the book is what tells the story,
Sure.
and
Yep.
then the music takes it to the next level. You know, to me, it's an extension of what the scene is,
Yeah.
and you can't. There's nothing else left to say, so you literally have to say it. And
Right.
that's how I sort of look at it. You know, and I think that most of the time, the lyricists will ask the book writer for a monologue to
Oh, that's interesting.
get
Yeah.
so that they'll be able to be cohesive with what started before the song, so that
Yeah.
they can expand on it, and then also so that they won't say the same thing twice. But I will say, I think the absolute hardest thing for a musical book writer to do, and especially many new ones that haven't done it before, that don't really realize it, writing into a song is the hardest thing ever,
Hmm.
because it's hard to make it seamless, and
Oh,
it's a
interesting.
real craft to not say too not echo what the song's gonna say too much, but also
Mm,
not have the song come out of the blue, and they're
right.
really
Oh, that's so
wrapped up in
interesting.
the right
Hmm.
way so that you're setting the song up for success.
Right. Right. Oh,
A
that's
lot of
really
times the
interesting.
song will be right, but going into the song won't be right, and then you're not involved in the song.
Right. And then it can't work because you
Yeah,
haven't set it up
totally,
right.
totally.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, amazing. Let me see if there's any other good questions for this conversation. Um, yeah, I guess just one other question about associate work, which is, do you all the associates that you've worked with, I know you kind of meet people in different ways, but has it primarily been people who have been in your rooms before as performers, or have you or you know people who know people? Like, someone was asking a question, sorry, let me actually say their name. Rohan Dupar asked a question about how do you recommend building relationships with creatives to find more associate assistant work if we're no longer performing or auditioning. So we're not like in those rooms as a performer. So I'm just curious in your practice if you've met people outside of just the people in your
I,
room.
I it would probably be like through recommendation. You know what I mean? But the thing to me is, like, the first time when I really need, like, Spam-A-Lot, I had someone who was a friend because it was the first time I'd done it, and I was like, I need to make
I
sure
need some.
I'm taken care of. And then same thing with Drowsy Chaperone, since I knew I had to. That's when I first was director choreographer, and I knew that I had to have people in both rooms. It was two people that I had worked with. Well, they were performers, and I gave them the chance to be associates, and I knew I liked them, and they had
Yeah.
a vivacious personality. So that's how it happened. But I've also had people trail me that I'm like, they would be great. I can know they would be great. And so
Right.
that's a way to do it too, because yeah, I mean, just you never know where it's going to come from. And also, that's the other thing I tell people: take every job you can. Don't be
Mm,
like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to do that because blah blah blah. I mean, if they're not paying you enough to live, that's one thing. But
yeah, right, sure.
I always say, what's it worth to you? But the thing is, you just never know who you're going to work with down the line, or
Yeah.
who might remember you and say, oh, you know what? I think I should give that person a call, or
Yep.
or I really like them because. And I think that it's so important, and you never know when a relationship that you maybe made in a terrible situation, with a
Right.
really bad show or something, we'll call you and say, you know what? I was just so impressed by the fact that you kept a good attitude during that, and you got 50 new pages a day, and you did it. Like,
Yeah.
whatever it is, um, you just never know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great. Okay. Okay, this is from Candace H and says, "Do you have any advice that you'd want to impart to high schoolers when it comes to musicals? I'm teaching students in that age range now, and it's hard to emphasize the work of it since it's also fun." So, like, this I'm assuming I read that as like in terms of a profession as opposed to just like a fun time.
Right. Oh, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, high
It's a tricky one
schoolers.
because I'm sure you don't know if they're. I don't know. I guess instinctively I would say maybe sort of focus on the ones that feel like they really want to do it professionally, and maybe that will inspire other people.
Mm.
Possibly, I don't know, but that's what I'd say. Also let them have fun.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure, sure. Yeah,
Let them have fun because also it should be fun. Or give them exercises that will let the fun go into something you can be constructive with.
yeah.
And
Right,
I'm
right.
talking off the top of my head, but that's
No,
what.
no, 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 that's great. They asked for the advice. This is great. And okay, so Shania, oh, sorry, so it's Shania, like Shania Twain. Uh, as Pooja says, what is your approach to making small and intimate scenes or songs still look big in a big theater while keeping their authenticity intact? So I guess if you have like a small scene, but it's in a big house because it's a big musical, but it's got a small scene
Right.
inside of it.
I think a lot of that has to do with lighting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, if it's a giant space, you're not going to get the intimacy if it's so funny. So much of it has to do with, again, I talk about math a little bit. It depends. Some scenes, I don't know how to ever explain this to people, but some scenes just shouldn't be like, if a scene is dead center stage and you want it to be intimate, it's not going to be intimate. There's
Mm,
too much space around it, even if you try to make it small.
right.
So I would put it to the side and
Mm,
put some other stuff. You know what I mean?
yep.
Just surround it with intimate stuff with a wall or two.
Yep.
It just depends. It's really some of it's just about space and having
Yeah.
too much space for something. And then there's other moments if something is really an important moment, you want to make sure it is center stage. If it's information you really need to get. It's just like there's those little things I've just learned over the years.
Right. 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 That's interesting. Okay. I think those are, I'm just scrolling to make sure, but I think those are the questions that feel relevant to this combo and to you. So I'm going to wrap it up with just one more question myself, which is like, I mean, I think we kind of know what's next. We got Greatest Showman, Hercules, but is there anything else that's like next that you're excited about that's coming, professional, personal?
No, working on a couple other things, but not ready to talk
No,
about.
you can't talk about.
But those are taking up plenty of time. Both
Sure.
those shows are big, fun, enormous shows. So
Yeah, amazing. Okay, great. And then I'm wondering, just like as we depart from this conversation, is there any advice you just give to the directors and choreographers out there who are, this is a challenging time for a lot of reasons, but like who are in the hustle, in the grind, trying to make their work. Just curious if you just have any advice that you give to people who are in this industry, I guess at all.
I mean, I'm going to say something. Follow your heart, but it is kind of true. It is kind of true. If you heard a lot, but I would say don't give up. If it's what you want to do, don't give up. Figure out a way to do it. I mean, I'll just leave you with like one more story, which is,
Please.
and everyone's probably heard this one before, so I apologize. I'll put it in my book page whenever that happens. Um,
Yeah.
I sort of made it happen myself. Like I told you, I wasn't someone's associate. I didn't trail someone. I just watched and watched and watched. And I decided one day that I was like, I needed to do something about it. I didn't want to be the person saying, oh, you know what, I would do this and I would do that. And, in the chorus.
Mhm.
And so I rented studio space between shows on Wednesdays and Saturdays and said, I'm going to be creative. I don't know what I'm going to do. And the first like few weeks I was just eating my sandwich going like, what the hell am I doing? And then
Just you?
what?
Was it just you?
It was just me in a room. Yeah,
Okay.
with my sandwich. And so I then got inspired and I had someone arrange three numbers and I said, I'm just going to do a presentation of three numbers. And I got 25 dancer friends that said they would love to help me and do it. And I rented studio space. And I spent, every penny I had, no joke, to do this and to print up programs. And I invited everyone I'd ever worked with, every writer, director, producer. I don't know where I, got that energy, but I did. And I did three numbers and everyone showed up. And they showed up because I was, I think because I did my work as a performer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how it happened for me. And then I got a job at the Fifth Avenue choreographing a new show, and then the Radio City thing happened, and then then it led to Encores and Mike Nichols. So you never know where it's going to come from, and that's why don't give up. If it's something you're passionate about, find a way to get it out there, or find someone that responds to you and get their help to get it out there. And it's not always easy, and you never know if it's going to work or not work, and you never know if it's going to fail or not happen 1 year, and then it's going to happen 3 years later out of the blue because someone else responds to it. And some shows you think are great, and they never happen. So that's why you don't give up.
Right. Well, with that, thank you, Casey. Thank you so much. This is great. I know you talked so much, but people were I can see it in the chat. I can see it in the Q&A. Like, people are very appreciative for this conversation.
Awesome.
You're super busy. Thank you for taking the time. And thank you all for being here. And we hope you join us for another SDCF event, and keep up to date with us on social media, if you got it, and on our website. So thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Bye.